Act 1. The Oppressive House on 2nd Street. In the late 19th century, Fall River, Massachusetts, was a city built on wealth and sweat. It was a thriving hub of the textile industry. Its skies darkened by the smoke from cotton mills, its streets bustling with a stark contrast of wealthy mill owners and poor immigrant laborers. On 2nd Street, a main thoroughfare in the city, stood a narrow, grim-looking house that belonged to one of Fall River's wealthiest, yet least liked, citizens, Andrew Jackson Borden. It was a house devoid of warmth and joy, a place where deep-seated resentments simmered under a thin veneer of Victorian respectability. And in the oppressive heat of August 1892, this house was about to become the stage for one of America's most brutal and enduring murder mysteries. At the head of the Borden family was Andrew, a 70-year-old property developer and bank president. He was a man of immense wealth, yet he was notoriously frugal, almost pathologically so. Despite his fortune, his house lacked indoor plumbing and electricity, amenities that were becoming common for people of his status. He was a cold, demanding, and unpopular figure in the town. His second wife was Abby Borden, a short, stout, and quiet woman. She was Andrew's wife of nearly 30 years, but she was not the mother of his children. For his 2 adult daughters, she would always be the stepmother, a source of quiet but profound resentment. The daughters were Lizzie and Emma. Emma, the elder at 42, was quiet and reserved. Her younger sister, Lizzie, was 32. Outwardly, Lizzie was the picture of a respectable spinster. She was heavily involved in the Central Congregational Church, taught Sunday school, and was a member of various Christian societies. But beneath this pious exterior was a woman of strong will, trapped in a stifling, unhappy home, completely dependent on her frugal father's allowance. Both sisters were unmarried and lived lives of quiet desperation, their animosity towards their stepmother, Abby, an open secret. They refused to eat meals with her and often referred to her simply as Mrs. Borden. Rounding out the household was Bridget Sullivan, a 26-year-old Irish immigrant who served as the family's live-in maid. She was a witness to the family's dysfunctional dynamics, a silent observer in a house filled with unspoken tensions. The atmosphere in the Borden home in the days leading up to the murders was particularly tense. The entire family, except for Lizzie, had been struck by a mysterious and violent stomach illness. Abby feared they were being poisoned. Andrew, in a rare display of concern, had even consulted a doctor. The tension was palpable. On the morning of August 4th, Emma, the older sister, was conveniently out of town, visiting friends in nearby Fairhaven. This left only 4 people in the oppressive house on 2nd Street: Andrew, Abby, Lizzie, and the maid Bridget. Act 2. The 40 Wax. The morning of Thursday, August 4th, 1892, dawned heavy and hot. The oppressive summer heat seemed to mirror the suffocating atmosphere inside the Borden home. The day began as any other. Andrew Borden left the house around 9 a.m. to attend to his business downtown. His wife, Abby, instructed the maid, Bridget, to wash the outside windows, a strenuous task on such a hot day. After her chores, Abby went upstairs to the guest bedroom to make the bed. Bridget Sullivan was outside, struggling with the windows, feeling unwell from the lingering effects of the stomach illness. Inside the house, only one other person was known to be active: Lizzie Borden. Sometime between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., while Andrew was still away and Bridget was outside, a horrific act of violence took place in the quiet of the 2nd floor. In the guest bedroom, Abby Borden was ambushed from behind. The killer, wielding a hatchet or a similar sharp, heavy weapon, struck her with a savage fury. The first blow landed on the side of her head, causing her to fall face down onto the floor. The attacker then straddled her back and continued the assault, striking her another 18 times in the back of the head. It was an attack of pure, unrestrained rage. The room was silent once more. Around 10:30 a.m., Andrew Borden returned home. His key failed to open the front door, which was bolted from the inside. He knocked, and Bridget, who had just finished with the windows, went to let him in. Lizzie was at the top of the stairs and, according to Bridget, let out a strange, quiet laugh as her father entered. Andrew, feeling unwell, went into the parlor to lie down on the sofa for a nap. Bridget went back to her room on the 3rd floor to rest. The house fell quiet again. A short time passed. Then, around 11:10 a.m., the silence was shattered. Bridget, resting in her attic room, heard Lizzie's voice from downstairs, calling her name with a strange urgency. "Maggie, come quick," she yelled, using the generic nickname often given to Irish maids. Bridget rushed down the stairs. She found Lizzie standing by the back door, looking distressed. And then Lizzie spoke the words that would become infamous. "Father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." The two women went to the parlor. The scene was one of unimaginable carnage. Andrew Borden lay on the sofa, his head turned slightly to the right. His face was a mangled, unrecognizable pulp, the result of 10 or 11 vicious blows from a hatchet. The attack was so brutal that one of his eyeballs had been split cleanly in two. His blood was spattered on the wall and on a picture hanging above the sofa. He had been attacked while he slept, a final, defenseless victim in his own home. In the span of about 90 minutes, in a locked house on a busy street in broad daylight, the two heads of the Borden household had been brutally and systematically eliminated. Act 3. The Spinster Suspect. The discovery of Andrew Borden's mutilated body sent a shockwave of horror through the neighborhood. Lizzie sent Bridget to fetch a doctor and a friend, and soon, the small, oppressive house was swarming with neighbors, police officers, and medical examiners. The crime scene, for the second time that day, was hopelessly contaminated. From the very beginning, the police were focused on one suspect, Lizzie Borden. Her behavior in the immediate aftermath of the discovery was noted by many as being bizarrely calm and detached. While others were panicking, she remained composed, answering questions with an unnerving coolness. Her alibi for the time of her father's murder was flimsy and inconsistent. She told police that after her father had laid down for his nap, she went out to the barn loft. She claimed she was there for about 15 to 20 minutes, looking for lead sinkers to use on a fishing line and eating some pears. However, police who investigated the loft found it to be stiflingly hot, and the dust on the floor was undisturbed, suggesting no one had been up there. As the investigation progressed, a mountain of damning circumstantial evidence began to pile up against her. First, there was a clear motive: money. Lizzie and her sister Emma stood to inherit their father's considerable fortune, valued at around $300,000, the equivalent of over $10 million today. They had recently had a bitter argument with their father over his decision to transfer a piece of property to Abby's relatives. The hatred for their stepmother, combined with the prospect of financial independence, provided a powerful motive. Second, there was the matter of the poison. Just one day before the murders, on August 3rd, Lizzie had gone to a local drugstore and attempted to purchase prussic acid, a deadly poison. She claimed she needed it to clean a sealskin cloak. The druggist, finding her request suspicious, refused to sell it to her. This incident suggested premeditation. Was this her initial plan to kill her parents? A plan she abandoned for the more brutal hatchet? Third, and perhaps most damningly, was the incident of the burning dress. A few days after the murders, a friend of the Borden sisters, Alice Russell, was staying with them at the house. On Sunday morning, she witnessed Lizzie taking a blue corduroy dress and burning it in the kitchen stove, piece by piece. When questioned, Lizzie claimed the dress was stained with old paint. The prosecution, however, would later argue that it was stained with the blood of her parents, and that this was a deliberate act of destroying evidence. Finally, there was the simple logic of the crime scene. The house was locked. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing of value was stolen. The murders were not the work of a random burglar. The killer was someone who knew the house, someone who was comfortable inside it. All signs pointed to an inside job, and the only person with the motive, the opportunity, and a demonstrated consciousness of guilt was the respectable Sunday school teacher, Lizzie Borden. On August 11th, based on her contradictory testimony at the inquest, Lizzie was arrested and charged with the murders of her father and stepmother. The news scandalized the nation. Act 4. The Trial of the Century. The trial of Lizzie Borden, which began in June of 1893, was one of the first great media sensations in American history. It was the O.J. Simpson trial of its day. Reporters from newspapers across the country descended on New Bedford, Massachusetts, to cover the proceedings. The public was completely captivated by the case. Could a woman, a respectable, church-going spinster from a wealthy family, truly be capable of such a monstrous and bloody crime? The prosecution, led by District Attorney Hosea Knowlton, was confident. They presented their mountain of circumstantial evidence. They detailed the family tensions, the financial motive, Lizzie's attempt to buy poison, and her strange, calm demeanor after the murders. Their most dramatic moment came when they presented the actual skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden in the courtroom, showing the jury the gruesome hatchet marks. The move was so shocking that Lizzie fainted upon seeing them. They argued that Lizzie had first killed her stepmother, then waited patiently for her father to return and fall asleep before killing him as well. And for the grand finale, they called Alice Russell to the stand to testify about the burning of the dress. But Lizzie Borden had a formidable defense. Her legal team was led by George Robinson, the former governor of Massachusetts. Their strategy was brilliant and twofold. First, they systematically dismantled the prosecution's case, creating reasonable doubt at every turn. They argued that the police investigation had been incompetent, contaminating the scene and overlooking other potential suspects. They pointed out that no blood had been found on Lizzie or her clothes on the day of the murders. They emphasized that no murder weapon could be definitively identified. Police had found several hatchets in the basement, but the one presented as the murder weapon was suspiciously clean and had a broken handle, which the defense argued was a recent break. Second, and most effectively, the defense played directly to the social prejudices of the Victorian era. They presented Lizzie not as a monster, but as a victim, a gentle, frail, and pious Christian woman trapped in a tragic situation. They argued that the very idea of a woman of her social standing committing such a brutal, bloody act was simply unthinkable. A crazed, maniacal man might commit such a crime, but a delicate spinster? Impossible. The all-male jury was clearly swayed by this line of reasoning. They could not bring themselves to believe that the woman sitting before them, a member of their own social class, was a savage killer. The trial lasted for 2 weeks. After the closing arguments, the jury was sent to deliberate. They returned with a verdict after just 90 minutes. The foreman was asked for the verdict. He stood and announced in a clear voice, "Not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Lizzie wept with relief. She was a free woman. The jury had acquitted her, but the court of public opinion would be far less forgiving. Act 5. A Life in Exile. Legally, Lizzie Borden was an innocent woman, but in the eyes of her community and the nation, she was a pariah, a monster hiding in plain sight. After the trial, she and her sister Emma inherited their father's substantial fortune. They sold the grim house on 2nd Street and purchased a large, modern mansion in a fashionable part of Fall River, which Lizzie grandly named Maplecroft. But money could not buy her acceptance. The society of Fall River shunned her. She was ostracized, whispered about on the street, and treated as a leper. Local children would gather outside her new home and taunt her, chanting the now infamous nursery rhyme that would cement her place in dark American folklore. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. The rhyme was factually incorrect. It was a hatchet, not an axe, and the number of blows was wrong. But it captured the public's conviction of her guilt. Lizzie lived out the rest of her life in that grand house, a wealthy but deeply lonely woman. She and her sister Emma had a falling out in 1905, and Emma moved out, never to speak to Lizzie again. The reason for their split is unknown, but many speculate it was related to the murders. The case remains officially unsolved. If Lizzie didn't do it, who did? Over the years, other theories have been proposed. Some point to the maid, Bridget Sullivan, who may have snapped after years of mistreatment. Others suggest a mysterious illegitimate son of Andrew Borden, seeking revenge and his inheritance. But all theories are weak, lacking any solid evidence, and all roads eventually lead back to Lizzie. She had the motive, the opportunity, and her actions after the crime were undeniably suspicious. Lizzie Borden died of pneumonia in 1927 at the age of 66. She was buried in the family plot, next to the very parents the world believed she had murdered. Her story has become an enduring American legend, a chilling case study of family dysfunction, Victorian hypocrisy, and the terrifying violence that can erupt from behind the closed doors of a respectable home. The question that haunted Fall River in 1892 still haunts us today. Did the quiet, church-going Sunday school teacher get away with one of the most brutal and infamous murders in American history?